He is a guy that covers the University of Georgia for 247 Sports, Dogs 247 Sports. Hey, Jake, welcome into the game. I hope you're doing well.
Hi, man. I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
Good. Safe travels back to Athens, but, I have a hard time. When I tell my friends I'm in Destin covering this event, I think they just think that we spend all this beach time here, which is not the case.
Man, I'll tell you what. I did not get one grain of sand on my feet from the beach in 4 days. I spent. That's one of those things where you almost end up. It's almost like sitting there watching somebody eat a real big, tasty steak, and you don't get to eat any of it. You're watching all these families come through that Hilton and have a good time, and they're going out to the beach and coming in from the beach, and you're sitting there waiting on a coach or an athletic director to walk through a lobby so you can stick a recorder in their face so they can fake a phone call to get away from you.
Jake, what was your biggest takeaway from this week, in your opinion?
Oh man, there weren't any big, profound takeaways. I don't think. I think the kind of the difference between, where Alabama and even LSU stand on this graduate transfer thing that passed today, and then kind of where the rest of the conference stands. I think that's probably it. Hearing guys, Saban guys like Kirby Smart, like Jeremy Pruitt, like Will Muschamp talk about how they believe if the kid, is a graduate, they should be able to go wherever he wants to. And then, Nick Saban had an interesting take as well, which was, hey, I think we would benefit as much as anybody from this rule, but I still don't like it. And so, I think Saban is one of these guys that I think he puts a lot of thought into kind of every single position he takes. And I kind of thought that one was interesting. But, if I had to come away with one, it would probably be that, the fact that, even though these guys are Nick Saban trained guys and they can attribute a lot of their success to what they learned under him, that they kind of differ from him on this current issue, on that specific issue.
Let me ask you, when you hear Nick Saban say we are one of the schools that would probably benefit the most, you think that's factual? You think that's true? You think Alabama would be one of the schools that will look back maybe 3-5 years from now and go, it did work out. They did get more players. Do you see that as the case?
It could be. Who doesn't want to go to Alabama? I mean, listen, if you're a really talented kid, let's say you get a graduate degree, let's say you get your degree in 3.5 years from Vanderbilt, and you're a really good football player and you can go help Alabama, why wouldn't you want to go to Alabama? Why wouldn't you want to go try to win yourself a championship? I mean, listen, I understand that the Georgia fans want to think that Georgia's on Alabama's level and that they're right there, and this is the tide's turning, no pun intended, and all that stuff. Listen, man, Alabama's the destination spot to be in college football. That's all there is to it. Everybody wants to be there. It's the Golden State Warriors in terms of the Kevin Durant deal, basically. It's Kevin Durant joined Golden State because they have something really special going. And whether you agree with it or not, that's kind of how I think teams, the graduate transfers within the SEC, would view Alabama. Now, on the flip side of that, you're going to have some guys leaving Alabama because there are some really talented dudes that don't find the field at Alabama after getting their degree. Your Maurice Smith, your Brandon Kennedys, who are going to have opportunity to transfer other places. So they're going to lose some guys, but they're not going to lose guys that are playing big minutes and helping them win championships down to down. They're going to lose valuable special teamers and depth. But I think that in terms of adding a player, adding a difference maker, I think Alabama's in as good a shape as anybody to add that kind of player.
Jake, here in Tuscaloosa, we spent literally like 9 months. I hosted the world's longest funeral after Alabama lost to Clemson in Tampa. Okay, losing a championship stings. I mean, it was like we played this what-if game, like literally all summer long for 240 days until Alabama kicked off against Florida State for the 2017 season. We played, what if the official, and it was all valid arguments. I'm not criticizing that, but I hosted the world's longest funeral here in Tuscaloosa after Alabama lost the championship game to Clemson. Can you describe the climate, the way that Georgia got defeated? What kind of hangover has been in effect there in Athens?
It hasn't been that bad, and I think it's because folks feel like it's the start of something. And it's hard to argue that. When you look at how Georgia's recruiting, when you look at kind of the trajectory of the program and how much Kirby was able to get done there, and really just about 18 to 20 months of real time. I think that everybody's pretty excited about where the program's headed. Now, obviously, they're pretty heartbroken about it, and but even going into that game, there are a lot of folks talking about playing with house and all that stuff. I didn't really agree with that because it's so absolutely difficult to get to that spot. But I think folks are, I think National Signing Day, the way Georgia closed, it was the best close in Georgia history, maybe best signing class on paper in school history. And I think that kind of calmed everybody down a little bit, backed everybody away from the ledge. And but I still think, Georgia's 2-3 years away of recruiting exactly how they have the past 2 years, really getting on that level when it comes to depth and competition. And, Alabama's just got something special going on over there when you start to talk about, 2 bad days of practice, you lose your starting spot. You can't exactly have that standard right now at Georgia because there's just not as much competition and depth.
Jake, how much is that team ready to make another SEC and defend their SEC championship? Can this be – I know they've got a favorable schedule, pretty much like we do here in Tuscaloosa. What's life going to be like there as they defend their SEC championship, try to get back into college football playoffs? Do you think they have the team to do it?
Yeah, I do, and here's why. I think it's a young team. It's younger than it was last year, but it's also very talented. And you brought up that schedule, and I think that's a big part of the recipe. Is Georgia gets the benefit of a soft, not just a soft SEC schedule, but a soft non-conference schedule. After playing a pretty tough one last year, you go to Notre Dame, deal with that. You got a tough one next year with Texas A&M rolling in. Texas A&M should be pretty good. And Notre Dame again coming to Sanford Stadium. But I think when you start talking about that easy schedule, it's going to allow time for maybe the defense to catch up to the offense, and maybe some of these young players to kind of find their way and become difference makers. You look at some of them guys that that helped Alabama win that national championship game. Those guys developed as the year came along, and that's a big part of that Nick Saban model that Kirby Smart I think is very similar to. Is that or borrowed from and took from in a lot of ways, is he's going to develop those young players. And I think by the end of the season, by the time it gets time to play Alabama and to really let rubber meet the road in terms of a college football playoff, I think Georgia's going to be a better football team than they are earlier in the season, just like I said, because of all that youth. So I think the talent level is up there with just about anybody else not named Alabama. It's just a matter of getting that young talent some experience and letting it develop. And I think the soft schedule allows that to happen.
When I look at Justin Fields and Jake Fromm, is this more of a media-created quarterback competition, or is there really a quarterback competition there in Athens?
Well, I kind of have a unique view of this, and maybe it's not so unique, but this is just how I see it, and I don't think it's really getting brought up much. Does Jake Fromm, does Justin Fields have the talent, the raw talent and ability to take that job from Jake Fromm? Absolutely. There is no question about it. Justin Fields is an immensely talented individual. That's why everybody in the country wanted him. But is Jake Fromm talented enough and cerebral enough and a hard enough worker? And that's not taken away from Justin Fields in those categories either, because he's a hard worker. He's a very intelligent kid. But does Jake Fromm have the tools to hold off Justin Fields? Yeah, sure. And so this just comes down to kind of a wait-and-see thing. Now, who do I think is going to – I think Jake Fromm's going to start game one. I think Jake Fromm's going to be the early season starter. If I had to put money on it, I'd say he's the starter of every game this year. But ultimately, Justin Fields is talented enough to win the job. And maybe even more importantly, early on, Justin Fields is talented enough to push Jake Fromm to maybe places that Jake Fromm couldn't push himself. And that's not to say that he's not a self-starter. He is. But there's listen, I guarantee you this. I'm not a very fast guy, but I think I could run a little faster with something chasing me. And that's kind of the whole idea of the competition thing, and I think that's how Jake Fromm would benefit from a very talented football player right there with him. And I also think Justin Fields, with his ability to run, with his ability to offer some different things, is a guy that can get a package or two in this offense and help him win ball games.
Jake, let me ask you, when you look at this Alabama-Georgia rivalry, and I know we talked about it a couple of hours ago, this thing is developing, and it's off to a pretty good start.
Yeah, it is. And the funny thing about it is, and I salute Georgia fans and Alabama fans when I say this, they found a way to make this thing emotionally charged. They really have. I mean, there is a lot of emotion involved here. I know it's not Alabama-Auburn, but, from the rivalry on the recruiting trail to just the playing in the national championship game in year 2 to, just the connections between Kirby Smart and Nick Saban and the fact that he's worked for Nick in 3 different jobs and all this stuff. I think it's awesome. I think it's great for the sport. I think it's great for the SEC. Listen, if you ask me, I do think that Kirby Smart, when you start looking at all of Nick Saban's assistant coaches, and this is even with Jimbo Fisher having won a national title, which one of these assistants is able to challenge Nick Saban over the next 4 or 5 years, I think Kirby is the guy. And I think that's the case because I think he's the only assistant coach that has been able to recruit at Nick Saban's level. I mean, number 1 class, and that's something nobody but Alabama's been able to do for a while. So I think that's something that you really have to look at there. And we'll see if Georgia can get on that level. It's an incredibly hard place to get to. But kudos to these fan bases and to these very good football coaches for creating a scenario that I think is really cool for the SEC because the more rivals, the more emotionally charged it gets, more opportunity the SEC gets to say it just means more. It's good for the league.
Jake, listen, man, have a safe trip. Let me invite people to connect with you. Dogs 247 Sports. Dogs 247 Sports. He's a team writer there, covers the University of Georgia. The home website for Alabama is obviously BamaOnline.com with Travis Ryer and Charlie Potter and Hank South and all those guys, BamaOnline.com. You can also connect with Jake, Rowe 247 Sports. Jake, I appreciate you, man. Safe travels back to Athens, and we'll talk very, very soon. Thank you, sir.
Can't wait, man. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot.